Hey guys, I'm Azra, and in this Lord of the Rings Rise of War video I'm going to show you the R5 build of Thorin. I already created a video about Thorin, but back in those days it was his commander damage build. I thought it would be the best build for him. Until now, we have discovered a more viable build revolving around his R5 title. It's a build where Thorin focuses on some commander damage by himself, but also a decent amount of damage is coming from his troops. So this is kind of a hybrid build. It's dealing commander damage, it's dealing troop damage, and together the damage is kind of okay. Thorin is becoming viable again. The highest stat for this build is might. You definitely want to push this stat as high as possible. Also plus attack, because your infantry dwarven units such as master throwers and guardians are going to benefit by plus attack a lot. And then focus isn't really essential for this build. You just have it as your second highest stat, but it's just there for the passive damage mitigation, and that's it. You don't really need to boost this. You may think that there might be a build where you can boost his focus to increase the burst damage with a skill called Inspiration for the first 3 rounds, like Sunint does with Inspiration, but I've tried that out. It didn't work out like I thought it would, which is why I went back to the build the Platypus recommended to me. He is the Thorin main player who recommended to me this build. He has been playing Thorin for over 8 seasons or so, and yeah, the troop boosting damage build with Inspiration wasn't as good as this build. The hybrid build was superior. Thorin himself has just enough speed to outspeed any important units, so he gets to hit first before they get to act. With my gear, I do have the Gigantic Hammer with Rend right now, Durin's Blade with Fortitude of Dwarves, Hunter's Guide with Aegis, and Erebos Pride with Arid Duin Formation. Now it is time to jump over to the build. In front of you, you are seeing the build that the Platypus has recommended to me. And I must say I have tested it out. You will see in the battle reports my results. This build worked the best for me in his Respect 5 build. Let's go over why we have selected these abilities. So to the top R0 tree, we have fully committed into Oaken Shield, maxed it out. Also Deliberate Strike. This is where your commander damage is coming from. And also we have some CC with the stun from Topple. This too is also dealing some decent amount of damage. Here alone, you have 3 sources of commander damage. Oaken Shield being active every other round, with some stackable damage mitigation against physical and elemental damage. This is just amazing. And this, by the way, isn't just only for dwarven units. It says allied army damage received minus a certain percentage, 5%. It can stack. So you aren't really bound to dwarven units. You can also have other units to do the tanking. So this damage mitigation will also work for them. Your biggest commander damage is definitely coming from Deliberate Strike. Every 3 rounds it's going to be active, and it has a huge gap between minimum maximum damage. One target will receive this much physical damage, and if you have the right items and also the skill Dwarfen Grid, you can boost the damage of Deliberate Strike even further, but we will get to that in a moment, also in the itemization part. Every 3 rounds also Topple is dealing some damage, physical damage as well. It's just great commander damage. On top of it, now this will be your last source of commander damage. It's your King Under the Mountain, your Respect 3 title. Every other round it's active also. It's not dealing a lot of physical damage against one target, but it also has a side effect. It's giving your dwarven units plus 15 defense, which can stack 5 times, and when you max it out, your dwarven units also receive plus 2 HP. If you have infantry dwarven units, they benefit the most from plus HP. Master throwers and guardians are just perfect for this. And now, since my Thorin is only at Respect level 5, I couldn't proceed further with the skill distribution. But if you have him at, let's say, Respect level 10, you have enough spare points to max out Topple, and then what I would recommend is go into Dwarven Grid, because Dwarven Grid is such an amazing skill to have, and with that and also a certain item which I'm going to show you later, you can make your Deliberate Strike such a bursty ability landing on round 3. Like, it will be such a big hit if you can max out Dwarven Grid later. Keep it in mind, max it out if you have spare points. But before you distribute anything into Dwarven Grid, you still have Kings of Durin's Folk to max out. This is a must-have in his hybrid build, in his R5 build, because all of your Dwarven units receive minus 15% damage. It is passive, it's always there, it counts against all sources of damage, be it elemental or physical. On top of it, when you have maxed it out, +2 attack for your Dwarven units. And again, infantry units, like units which have 100 units per command, benefit the most from plus attack or plus HP. There you go. Like, this is amazing. And also, while you are here, make sure to spend 1 point into well prepared, because that way your melee units get a chance to counterattack. We don't pick this for the damage. The damage really is almost nothing. We have this to get rid of stacks such as White Council much faster. That is the build. If you have more points, finish Topple, then max out Dwarven Grid. Now let's see what items synergize the most with this build. If it comes to purple gear, what I would recommend is like these items over here. To the top we have the Battle Axe with Flay. I like Flay since it has tons of might, and also with Dwarven Grid for the first 4 rounds, you ignore 30% of the target's defense. This is great because if you also like max out Dwarven Grid and you have Flay equipped, you make sure that your deliberate strike is dealing the maximum amount of damage you can provide with your purple weapon on round 3. So I have to give it to the Battle Axe here if you can max out Dwarven Grid. And the rest of the gear is just situational. When you're fighting against a lot of Witch Kings, go with Hauberk and Fire Protection. If you're fighting a lot of focus damage such as Gandalf the White, King of the Dead, Oathbreakers, Galadriel, Sauron with his focus damage build, yeah, like you name it, I think you get the gist of it. Go with Quilted Armor and Focus Protection. If you want a more universal approach and you aren't really scared of elemental damage, then go with Scalemate and Melee Vigor. Helmet-wise, you have the Brutal Helmet. I like this a lot because of the plus might and also plus HP for your melee units, and followed by melee vigor. But since you're going to have more than one unit in your army, you are kind of vulnerable against army madness. In order to close that gap, you may hold on to your Horseman's Helm with Resolve whenever need be. I'm a friend of switching your gear in accordance to the situation. So don't be static, swap out your gear whenever need be. Like when you encounter a lot of Ring of Terror users, go with Resolve. Isildur, there is a lot of Isildurs running around. Sometimes they have the Madness build. And last but not least, you have 2 accessories. The best one is Hiflane. It has all the stats you need. All of your army receive HP if you have Hiflane. Some might, some focus, and also Mend if you're fighting good side. If you're fighting against evil side, you may consider using Bane of Orcs instead. And as your last viable accessory, you can use the Wizard's Fireworks whenever the enemy is bringing a commander with evade against you. Let's say Gil-galad. You will thank me later if you have Hunter's Mark, because this is giving not just only your units pursuit, like 90% chance of pursuing your enemy, but also your commander. And remember, this is a hybrid build. Thorin too needs to hit to deal damage, right? Hunter's Mark is giving you exactly that. Allied units and commander get pursuit. And there you go, this is the purple gear recommendation. Let's see how it looks like with the golden gear. If it comes to your weapons, you have a few options over here. Now, if you ask me, his best weapon is for sure his R10 item, because this is what Thorin does. He specializes in fighting evil side, which is why you have this special effect, Slayer of Orcs. And look at this. This weapon right now is only twice refined, which is giving Thorin already plus 45% increased damage against Orcs and Uruk-hai. That is quite amazing. If you max refine this weapon, Thorin does all the way up to plus 90% increased damage. Just give this to Thorin whenever you fight evil side, not against evil man. That is not the best use case scenario for Thorin. You shouldn't play Thorin against evil man or good side units anyway. That's not what he specializes in. But he still has a decent amount of might with his weapon. Also a universally viable plus attack for his dwarven units, which is why I just love this weapon. Like, look at this. It's comparable to the Metak of the Ironhilt stats. Exactly the same with the Gigantic Hammer. Plus 6 attack, plus plus 42 might, while giving you the tons of damage against orcs and Uruk-hai. You should have him against those units, and also bring another commander along with him, like run him in tandem to make up for his weakness. Use Thorin against orcs and Uruk-hais, and against his weakness like evil man or good side units you could use another commander. But I would definitely consider his R10 weapon his best weapon. Now, if you want the more universal approach, you can go with the Magic of the Iron Hills. It has two nice special effects. The first one being Fury. For the first 4 rounds, your commander will deal plus 24% increased physical damage when you max refine it, and this too goes hand in hand with the skill Dwarven Grit. You will deal lots of burst damage on round 3 with Deliberate Strike. If you don't have the special effect, don't worry, you can still make do with Might of Dwarves until your time with Fury comes. In case you still don't have a Matic, you can still make do with a Gigantic Hammer, all the beautiful stats, and Rend. Now here you rely more on the damage from your troops, because Allied Army deals, ignores physical damage by 18% when you equip the special effect. It's also nice to have. And then as a last resort, you can still use the Axe of Khazad Dûm with Cleave if you don't have the aforementioned items over here. But just as I said, use him as an Orc and Uruk-hai killer. In contrast to his weapons, it was much easier to find his best in slot armor, which is the Durin's Plate. Very straightforward, lots of plus HP and attack for your Dwarven units, tons of might, and above all tactical maneuvers for the burst damage mitigation. It's just amazing. If you don't have it, you can make do with a second best special effect being Fortitude of Dwarves for the passive damage mitigation. And if it comes to his helmets, we have 2 options if you ask me. The first one is Iron Bassinet. It's giving lots of might and the desperately needed plus defense for your Master Throwers. They don't have a lot of defense, but this will help them survive. Fortitude of Dwarves will also support the survival of them, and sometimes when you need to fight Sunins and you want to mitigate the damage you receive, maybe go with Arrow Suppression. Or let's say you are fighting against Good Side a lot. Good Side has a lot of ranged units, which is why Arrow Suppression becomes more important. But I believe Fortitude of Dwarves is the more universal approach. And as a second helmet choice, I think Hunter's Guide is very viable. Decent amount of might, plus attack for your Master Throwers. They love this. They are strong against melee units. Evil Side has a lot of melee units, but above all it has Aegis, and Aegis is covering one of your biggest weaknesses, being Army Madness and also Army Stun. For the first 4 rounds you are safe against that with this. After all, your army consists of 2 or 3 units, and with Aegis you protect them from nuking themselves. And there you go. These are my recommendations when it comes to best in slot golden helmets. And then let's follow up with the best in slot accessories. And I think there is no competition to the Erebos Pride. This is just the best accessory a Dwarven commander like Thorin can equip. Tons of might, plus HP for your Dwarven units, and it has Eretloon formation, further increasing the Dwarven units damage. It scales with might. That's just beautiful. Thorin has tons of might. If you don't have it, you can still make do with a Box of Knowledge. Okay, it's not as heavy in might as the Erebos Pride, but it still has plus 3 HP and also a kind of nice special effect, because whenever this triggers in your favor, you can activate 2 buffs for yourself. The first buff has a 60% chance to mitigate physical damage by 9%. This triggers with a 60% probability when max refined. In addition to that, you also have a 60% chance to trigger the chance that your units deal the highest amount of damage they can. That makes a lot of sense for Dwarven units, since Dwarven units have one of the biggest gaps between minimum and maximum damage. And I'm looking especially at the Master Throwers. That is insane. If you can have a max refined Box of Knowledge, it's a good fallback plan whenever you don't have an Erebos Pride. And now it is time to check out the troop composition for his R5 hybrid build. Luckily, the troop composition for this build is pretty straightforward. You don't need a lot for it, like Master Throwers, Guardians and Ram Riders will do the trick. You could go with a composition like this, which I am running right now, like around 2500 Guardians. You can also lower the number to 2300 and then further increase the number of your Master Throwers. But I like to run something like this. Have 2500 Guardians, around 3,700 Master Throwers, followed by 750 Ram Riders. That makes sense because of the special effect Trample they have. We want to reduce the enemy defense and then deal more damage. Ram Riders are your fastest units, they get to hit first, and then Master Throwers and Guardians will follow up with the additional damage. This is what I like to run, but sometimes you just don't have the conscription and you need to lift the burden of your conscription. If that time comes, you can just have an even amount of these units. You know, sometimes we have long battles, we can't sustain the ideal amount of units we would like to have in an army, and then you need to have an equal amount of these units, such as these, like 3,100 Guardians, 3,100 Master Throwers. That will also do the trick. But you can also just remove your Ram Riders and just go along with your Guardians and Master Throwers to benefit from the plus HP and plus attack for your infantry units. And I'm talking about units that have 100 units per command. Guardians and Master Throwers are the best case scenario for that. For Thorin, do something like that. You could have an equal amount of these units, but you can also lower the number of your Guardians a bit, increase the number of your Master Throwers. It's really coming down to what you're up against, but yeah, you want to have a bit more Master Throwers than Guardians in this formula. And there you go, these two troop compositions are our recommendations. Try it out and then adjust the number of your Guardians and Master Throwers in accordance to the enemy army. But what I like to run is having 3 units in my army with the Ram Riders, because 3 units in my army also means that I have 1 additional unit that can redirect a debuff towards that 1 unit. Let's say you are fighting a Frenzy Dwalin or a Frenzy Khaldun. The chances of a Frenzy commander proccing their hunt down against the same target is more likely in a 2-unit army than in a 3-unit army. So if you have Ram Riders, you have a higher probability of redirecting the hunt down towards, let's say, the Ram Riders, and then the follow-up from Frenzy may redirect the hunt down proc towards your Master Throwers or Guardians. That way you split the hunt down debuff among your army instead of having it on 1 unit and then the enemy just bursts that 1 unit. That's why I like to go with Ram Riders in addition to these 2 units. And that's also why I love to have Ram Riders in my army. They act not just only as a debuff redirection, they also provide the minus defenses debuff against the enemy army. And there you go, these 2 army compositions are viable enough for you to get started in Thorin's R5 hybrid build. And now it is time to check out the battle reports. In this fight we are up against the Frenzy Dwalin, and let me tell you, in the later seasons you will encounter more and more of these dangerous commanders. So Thorin, let's check out the gear. Gigantic Hammer of Rend, it's the exactly same gear I showed to you at the beginning of this video. It is the commander damage build with the hybrid troop comp, and let's see what has happened. We may have lost this fight, but there is also a reason why. First of all, remember, Thorin isn't really specializing in killing good side commanders. That's not what he does. With his R10 weapon, he specializes against orcs and urukais. But still, this outcome is decent considering that very fact. You could also improve the outcome if we had the right weapon. Imagine if we had the Metal of the Iron Hills with the Fury special effect and also a few more levels to go. Max out Topple. Like, we are fighting against a very high respect level Dwalin right now. We can even out the odds with more respect level. So, he has Gigantic Hammer with Frenzy, one of the strongest commanders in the game, Superior Hauberk with Fire Protection, Brutal Helmet with Melee Vigor, Box of Knowledge with the Warrior typing, tanky units at the front, and I think this is okay. There is nothing to be ashamed of when we are fighting against the Frenzy Dwalin, even if we are losing the fight. How much damage have we done? We have done around 250k damage while having received 300k-ish damage. In the detailed view, we see that Thorin does 80k damage without his R10 weapon. Keep that in mind, once you have the R10 weapon, this damage will skyrocket against orcs and urukais. Master Throwers, 110k damage, Guardians also a decent amount of damage, 50k-ish damage in total. That is kinda okay, I can live with this outcome considering the facts, like we aren't specializing against good side, we don't have the R10 weapon here against orcs and urukais, and we are at lower respect levels. My Thorin only R5, Dwalin much higher respect level. Here is another fight against Dwalin. This time the levels aren't really that even, he is 5 levels below us, we have the same gear like like from before, same build. Let's see what Dwalin has. It's a gigantic hammer frenzy Dwalin again, but not too high refined. And then Scale Mail with melee vigor, Brutal Helmet, melee vigor, Hif Lane with Mend. Alright, this is what we have achieved. And then in the snapshot page, we have done 260k-ish damage while having received 220k damage. In the detailed view, again, Thorin 80k-ish damage, Master Throwers 105k damage, and Guardian 70k damage. Now let me also show you one fight from the player who recommended me this build, who is playing Thorin for over 8 seasons. He is an amazing guy. I must say that I am very glad that I got to meet him. He has all the gear he needs to make this build shine. Orcrist, 2 times refined. And then he has Durin's Blade with tactical maneuvers. That is the special effect I would also like to equip. And then Iron Bassinet with the high plus defense for your Dwarven units. That is just insane. Master Throwers love this. They are so squishy because they lack defense. They have low defense. But with this, they get the protection they need. And also Erebos Pride. That is the best in slot accessory for Thorin. So he has Deliberate Strike. He skipped the 1 point into, what was it? The Topple for the stun. That is a pity. I think 1 point would have been nice just to have the stun. But he went straight forward with the Dwarfen Grid. He wants to burst damage with Deliberate Strike. And Kings of Durin's Folk also maxed out. I think 1 point into Well Prepared just to get rid of stacks would also be very nice to have. That is the only complaint I have here. Like, one for the stack removal, Well Prepared, one for the stun to have the CC topple. It goes a long way. But here you see how strong Thorin can be when being played in the right hands. He is rocking a 2-unit army with Master Throwers and Guardians, and look how viable it is. He is fighting a Gandalf with Kava and Smite, and then Hunterskin Ranged Vigor with Trapper's Hood and Hysteria, and Wizard's Fireworks with Hunter's Mark. It is a pretty meta build Gandalf, but this Gandalf is fighting with the Evil Side build, as I see. He has maxed out Champion of the Light. Not ideal, but I think you all know where this is going. It won't change a lot. Thorin is even 5 levels below this Gandalf the Grey. I think that's a pretty awesome outcome. Let's check out the snapshot page. Thorin has done 215k-ish damage against Gandalf the Grey while having received almost 80k damage. And in the allied view, Thorin has done 100k damage. Remember guys, whenever you fight against Evil Side, against Orcs and Urukais, because of his R10 weapon, this damage will skyrocket in accordance to how much you have refined it. And then Master Throwers have done almost 80k damage, Guardians 40k-ish damage. Now let's continue with my Thorin again, with the Ram Rider troop composition. Here I am fighting a strong Gandalf the White player. Thorin has still the same gear. It is the commander damage build with topple, without the Dwarfen Grid. I wish I had enough spare points, and then I would have committed into Dwarfen Grid as well. But this is as far as you go with an R5 Thorin. Here I am fighting Gandalf the White with Glamdring, once refined, and then Golden Skin, Fortitude of Cavalry, Grey Wizard's Head, Fortitude of Cavalry, Mearas Reigns mounted unit supply. So he is in his mounted unit build, as I see. He has Horsemanship maxed out, his R5 title maxed out. Yep. Also, he provides lots of plus defense for his units. But I think that is a quite decent report here. These 3 mounted units are hard to conscript. If we have a look at the snapshot page, we see that we have done 160k damage while having received 210k-ish damage. But keep in mind, like, we are only at R5, we don't specialize in killing good side anyway, so this is still decent. In the detailed view, we have done 50k damage with Thorin, almost 60k damage with Master Throwers, and 50k-ish damage with Guardians. Here is a fight against a Witch King. Thorin still has the same items, the same build, nothing has changed. This Witch King player is going with the elemental damage build, Alchemist Bomb. Yep, nothing out of the ordinary. Cutlass with melee might, Hauberk with fire protection, Horseman's Helm with resolve, Drums of Moria with haste of soldiers. If he had Bane of Dwarves, he probably had won this fight, but it is what it is. Now let's check this out. Keep in mind that we don't have equipped the superior hauberk with fire protection, so if we had done that, it would have been a much better victory for Thorin. So there is a workaround against Witch Kings as well. In the snapshot page, we have done almost 270k damage while having received 300k damage. Isn't this insane? Like, we have tanked so much damage and still won the fight. And we have easy to conscript units here. Only the ram riders are a bit expensive, but they are low in numbers here, so we don't cry after them. In the detailed view, Thorin has done 120k damage, and we aren't even equipping the R10 weapon. Isn't this insane? And then Master Throwers have almost 120k damage, similar to Thorin, and Guardians have 30k damage. That is okay too. Let's move over to the Gil-galad fight. Let's see what has happened. So my Thorin still with the same gear, nothing has changed, the same troop composition, and this is an insane Gil-galad. He has Elven White Knife with Might of Elves, High Elf Hauberk with Resistance Protection, Hunter's Guide with Discord. Man, am I glad that I have a Hunter's Guide with Aegis to counter this. That is insane. Silver Harp of Rivendell with Might of Elves, and he also have Icicle, the stun. That is amazing. It is a pretty standard meta build Gil-galad. So he can stun my units and shut down my hybrid troop damage a bit with the stun after round 4. Since my Aegis won't cover stun immunity after round 4, but that's just what it is. He also has some amazing first 2 rounds evade for his elves. So it's coming down to how much luck he has whenever this procs in his favor. Sometimes he is lucky, sometimes he isn't as lucky. And that is also why when you don't have Pursuit, you sometimes just totally get destroyed by a Gil-galad. But when that Gil-galad is unlucky with his evade, you have better results than this, just as a side note. Let's see what has happened in the snapshot page. We have done almost 115k damage while having received 250k damage. That is a lose for us, that's for sure. And in the detailed view, we have done 40k damage with Thorin, 55k damage with Master Throwers, and 30k damage with our Guardians. So what can we do to improve the outcome of this fight? I think we just need more refinement on our Aegis to increase our chances with the stun resistance. And then what may be of benefit is having a pursuit item. I think the best accessory in this case against Gil-galad is the Wizard's Fireworks, because it's giving Thorin and his army pursuit, while items such as the Palantir with Tactical Mark only gives your troops the pursuit. But with Wizard's Fireworks and Hunter's Mark, you get to land all of these abilities. Like Oaken Shield will land on round 2, and also your King Under the Mountain will also land on round 2 as well. And on round 3, Deliberate Strike can also land. Alright, so that is what I would like to have, and I think having a Tactical Maneuvers as a special effect will also help us and survive the burst damage of Gil-galad. But we don't have it, and for the time being this is the best we can do. We are still at low respect levels. And there you go, this is the new meta build we could find with Thorin's R5 title. It is a very viable build, it is much better than the pure commander damage build with his R3 title. We tried that out in another video, but this one proves to be much better. Thanks again to the player The Platypus, he was a big help and I really enjoy playing with Thorin. And if you are wondering if it would make sense to invest into Thorin's R10 weapon, my answer to that is definitely yes. He has his use cases. Sometimes you need to counter commanders who specialize in orcs and urukais. To name you a few, Sunund has orc units like the Morgul Arbalest. You can just decimate them with Thorin. Or how about the Witch King with his alchemists? Thorin is a nice case scenario against him, and many more commanders, but I think you get the gist of it. I love it. Thorin is also one of my favorite commanders in the game. I'm happy that we did this guide, and I hope that many of you will enjoy this build as well. Go out there and try it out. If you enjoyed this one, let me know by leaving a like, consider subscribing, leave a like, and above all, share the video. That helps a lot. And that being said, I see you guys next time.